Okay, hello everybody out there. Welcome to another edition of Schreiner Life. Tonight we'll be talking about travel and where we've traveled before, where we'd like to go, maybe some of our experiences. So with me, as always, are my faithful co-hosts, Dr. Matt Goodwin and Dr. Charlie Huber. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Huber is the Dean of Students at Schreiner University, and Dr. Goodwin is the Assistant Dean of Students. And then we have two special guests with us tonight, Thomas Woods and Katie Burke. And I'll let the two of them introduce themselves real quick, and then we'll go into the question format. So, Thomas, if you'll start first.
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me. My name is Thomas Woods. I'm the coordinator of Changing Global Society over at Schreiner University. I also teach a couple of history classes as well.
And I'm Katie Burke. I'm a senior at Schreiner. I'm a psychology major and a double minor in management and global studies.
All right, wonderful. So kind of getting started, I just want to know a little bit about everyone's travel history. We've all traveled quite a bit, I think, and been blessed to be able to do that. And so my first question is just right off the top. What are your favorite three places you've traveled to? And that can be foreign or domestic. So either one, but your favorite three trips you've been on or places that you've traveled to, and then why? No, not everybody will rush it out
there. Mine would probably be China, Malaysia, and Hungary, because I think that when I traveled to those places, I knew like nothing about them really. So when I got there, it was the biggest culture shock. And I kind of like that when I go to places. So those are my three favorites.
Okay.
Were those, Katie, were those on Schreiner trips, or were those travel that you did on your own?
So I lived in Hungary for 4 months as studying like abroad. And then the other two trips I went with like a third party like tour group.
Gotcha.
Kind of Malaysia, yeah.
Excellent. If y'all don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and jump in next. Interestingly enough, I actually didn't travel much at all when I was a college student, but after I became an adjunct instructor online, the first place I want to talk about and the first place I went to was actually Cuba with a Schreiner trip. It was during that very brief window, that kind of thaw that existed by about 2015, 2016. Schreiner University put on a trip. It was very nice because my brother was a student here at the time, actually. So he and I were both able to go, and it was a Hemingway themed trip. So we got to see his house, his cats, all that stuff. But it was a fantastic trip, lots of fun, fascinating to see. And flying out of Cuba was delightful because we flew into Havana, right? Yeah. But we were actually supposed to fly out. I think it was either the day before or maybe even the day of, when President Obama was supposed to arrive in Havana on his trip to Cuba. So we could not get through the airport. The whole city was pretty much on shutdown for security purposes. We had to drive on a bus all the way to Santa Clara, where we flew out of what I think could be called an airport. But in reality, it was more of a building in the middle of a field somewhere. It had air conditioning, so that one of those window units. So that was nice, but that was very fun. That was back in 2015, I want to say. The second favorite, my second favorite place I've been to is Germany. So I've had the pleasure of being to Germany twice, once on like a training tour. Kate, I don't know, actually, I think I do know that the trip you were on to Malaysia and China was probably with EF Tours.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I was doing a training tour with them as a faculty teacher leader
right.
for a group of high schoolers. At the time I was teaching high school. And I went to Berlin for a quick jaunt of like 3 or 4 days. And then I led a trip that was Paris, Lucerne in Switzerland, and Berlin. In Munich in southern Germany. And both times I've been to Germany, even though it was only like 6 or 8 months apart, very fun. And it was nice to be able to actually practice the language that I theoretically know how to speak on a survival level, theoretically. And I think that was definitely a very memorable experience. And the third kind of category, I've lumped them together, but domestic travel. Anytime I like going to a big city, Chicago, New York, DC, I always try to set aside a day for museums, because Natural History Museum, Chicago Field Museum, Smithsonian, it's definitely a whole lot of fun. But again, I'm a history major and I teach history, so it's kind of, it leans towards that maybe.
Those are awesome. So I'm going to jump in and I'm going to say one of my favorite trips that I've ever taken was to Big Ben. And I've been a couple of times. I actually, it wasn't until recently that I discovered how much I just love Big Ben and the ability to sort of explore. And it's not, I mean, relatively close to where we're at. And I know it's domestic. I've been out of the country, but to have something like that in your backyard's pretty amazing. The second trip, so sort of going in reverse chronological order, the second trip I would say was my trip to Barcelona, Spain. And again, of all the places I visited, I'm not a big fan of just huge cities, but there's something about places like Barcelona and London and places that have just a unique history. And Barcelona was amazing. The people, everything about it I loved. And so I would like to go back and spend more time there. And then the third trip, again, another domestic trip I did in high school, and it was a 7-day whitewater rafting trip in Oregon on the Snake River. They filmed the movie River Wild there and on certain parts of it. And so just so you can see my inclination is towards nature, hiking, camping, river rafting, those kinds of things. All of those trips have a significant meaning to me. But it's, I think travel, even to, definitely foreign travel has a special place because you get to see how other people live, going down to Mexico and having been to Central America and seeing, real, how different people live is just heartwarming and amazing. And the generosity of different cultures is always surprised me, but those would be my 3 favorite trips.
Well, I think for me, I'll have to start with a little place, not as small nowadays, but called Sayulita, Mexico. Took several trips there growing up. So for surf trips, the one that sticks out the most is, I think it was probably my senior year of college, maybe. My dad and my 2 brothers and I decided that we were going to drive from Kerrville through Mexico to the Pacific side to this little place called Sayulita. It took us, I don't know, 18 plus hours to get there on a whole bunch of back roads that you probably don't want to find yourself on nowadays. And got there, stayed at these little bitty hotels along the way, and really kind of lived through as close as we could the surf movies kind of growing up that we used to watch of them just taking off and going on these surf trips. So that'd probably be the first one. Next, Scotland. That is probably one of my most favorite places in the world. Now, I haven't been to a whole lot of places, but it just captivated me when we were there. I was fortunate enough to be selected to go with the school, with our Eddington Society. And out of all the places that we went, I love the whole country, the Highlands and everything, but a little town called Oban, and we actually only spent like an hour there. But as a coastal little town, and I wish I would have been able to spend more time there. I actually spent with the hour running from the port of where we entered up to kind of, I guess, what you would call a mountaintop, to visit some of the ruins and things there while I was there. So I spent a lot of time like putting in the miles in Oban within that hour running around. Enjoyed that a lot. A beautiful country. Love Scotland. And then closer to home, Ruidoso, New Mexico. Just because that has a lot of family ties to it. We we've taken a lot of trips to New Mexico, both in the wintertime and in the summer, to hang out and kind of as our getaway. So just a special place for us as a family. We see your lips moving. We can't hear you.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. I had to switch mics because the kids are doing workouts next door. But for me, my favorite trip probably ever was my trip to Israel. We did that a few years ago, and just to be to a place where you've read so much about, whether that was in the Bible or it was in history class or whatever, and actually put a tangible site to all those places makes the learning for that environment a lot better. And so it's really interesting because you got to see a lot of different styles of architecture because of so many people who've, built there over the centuries or the millennia, I guess. And that was really interesting. While we were there, we got to go to the Holocaust Museum that was there, and that was a life-changing experience. We're supposed to be there for like 2 hours, and I spent my whole 2 hours in the first room and never left. They'd come get me. It was interesting, and to be able to do that and see something like that from the perspective of the Jewish people, that was super amazing to me. My second favorite trip was to Ghana, Africa. I was there for 19 days, and we landed in Accra, which is the capital city, and drove all the way to the top, the top eastern corner, I guess you could say, of the country, to a little tiny space called Baku. And it was so interesting to be there and to see the way that people live. Like what Dr. Ebro was saying, when you see a country that is less fortunate than the one that you live in every day, it changes your perspective on the things that you get to have and what your freedoms are, or what you're able to do. And so that was really interesting to me. And then my third favorite trip was, I was a little kid. We went to the Four Corners here in the United States. That was so cool. I was really into Billy the Kid and Doc Holliday and all those super cool guys, from the Western days. So we got to go to Tombstone and the whole trip. And then I got to do a one-handed handstand in 4 states at the same time. So that was pretty sweet. So those are my top 3. So thinking about travel, what do you guys enjoy most about travel? Like, what is it that makes you want to continue to go to different places, or go maybe to the same place? But what makes you want to do that?
That's hard. I mean,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Are you sure? Okay. I just think like there's a lot of different like parts of travel that, like, when you put it into a whole, at least for me, is the reason that I continue to love traveling. Like, I love airports. Like, I know some people hate airports. I love them. Like, I get there 3 hours early. I'll walk around and be like, oh, look at that. And I go in all the gift stores and stuff. So like, I love the airport part. I love if it's a 10-hour flight, I've been on a 15-hour flight. Like, it doesn't matter. I love like every part of that. And then of course, like getting to the place and seeing I like languages. So I usually like when the places I go to are different languages, because it's like, it's a little bit stressful, but it like makes it like even more exciting. And so I think the reason I keep traveling is because I just like new things. And I like going to places that, like, the second you land, you're excited because there's new things to like look at and find.
Absolutely. Definitely. Katie and David, you've both kind of hit the nail on the head for 2 of my big reasons of why I like to travel. David, when you talked about Israel, when you talked about how it helps put that region in context, it helps put anything you then learn about later in context. That's a huge part of why I enjoy travel, at least for me, to be able to see. I'll give you an example. So did not have the opportunity to travel much at all, especially internationally when I was a student, and then even teaching for a long while in high school. I didn't have that opportunity, but what stood out to me I'm going to go back to the Berlin trip just briefly. We went to Potsdam, which is the suburb outside of Berlin. It's where the Potsdam Conference was held. I'll try not to do a history lecture here, but that was the big three. That was the end of World War II. And the famous picture is all three of them sitting on those wicker chairs right outside. And we were walking through that place, the area, and the tour guide, it wasn't our tour guide, but the museum kind of coordinator just kind of pointed out at the ground. And oh yeah, by the way, that's where the picture was taken. And it's like, oh my God, we're just walking right past it, really. So seeing those areas that have significance for whatever reason, and then being able to later kind of build your own schema for that and be able to have those visuals to draw upon, that's a huge part of why I enjoy traveling. And Katie, to your point about experiencing a novel situation, experiencing something new, something that breaks the monotony, that absolutely is a key aspect as well. I'm someone who on the Myers-Briggs personality test scores like 8% introvert, all right, like 98%. Things exhaust me, but being able to and so it's easy for people like that to get into the hub of, if you're watching Breaking Bad, for instance, and they have that tracker on the car and you drive there, back, occasionally to the grocery store, back. It's easy to fall into that trap for me. It's very easy to fall into that trap for me. And so travel helps break that up. Katie, I also agree with you about airports. On some level, I also like to throw myself on the mercy of the system. It's like you arrive there and it's the line now. This is your ride for the next 8 to 10 to 20 hours. That's okay. You can't fight it too hard. You might as well just go with
No. No.
And that's like, nuh-uh.
No. The moment I walk into an airport, I get stressed. The moment I have that feeling of like have completely lost control of any decision making that I have out the window. Oh no.
Okay. I've experienced that as well. Doing a trip, all of this travel, like normally when I throw myself on the mercy of the system, it's like traveling solo, whatever, fine. If I wake up, it's all good. If I actually get there, I get there. But I did have to lead a trip I got to lead a trip, not have to. I got to lead a trip with high schoolers, and getting them through the airports on some of the layovers. It was booked through one of those third-party providers, and sometimes they find a way to pass the savings on to you by finding you've got 30 minutes to get across the
Right.
Yeah. I might have to one up you on there though, because every summer I do 200 8th graders and on a very small airplane all at once. Like
absolutely win. One of them, and I won't name names, but one of them, we had gone through drills and stuff, right? It's like, I'm gonna go at the end. You guys are gonna go up ahead first. Make sure you pack appropriately. They had like their entire medicine, shampoo, like all those giant, like this, right? Like this size liquid containers in like a bag. So man, I have experienced some pretty severe stress on that. Something about being responsible theoretically for getting them back home alive maybe adds a whole nother level to everything.
You know, hearing why you travel, there's so many positives to it. But for me, there's two things that I come back to time and time again, and it's going to sound sort of maybe cheesy and maybe too philosophical. I actually, beyond what I'm going to say, I enjoy the monotony of packing. Whether I'm camping, I like getting all the stuff. I like being organized and then heading out the door. I like packing my suitcase. I like all of that. I actually hate unpacking. So that's the least favorite part of travel, is coming home. And I think you should always, my pro tip for traveling, I don't know if this is a question, you should always plan 1 day extra between work and vacation so that you can get home and decompress from your travel to rest before you have to go back to work or school or whatever. But the two reasons that I would give for traveling that hit me the most are connections. And so one, I travel because I want to connect to nature. So that one. And then the other reason I like to travel is to connect to people. And so not just the people you're traveling with, but complete strangers. One of my favorite things in the entire world to do, and this sounds weird, is to eat dinner with a complete stranger. And I've done it by myself multiple times. I've done it with travel companions. And so, sitting at a restaurant that is completely packed and people are waiting for tables. And if there's two of you and there's two people waiting, inviting them to join you so they don't have to wait, and creating those connections, man, if you don't do that on a regular basis, you should, because you'll never meet these people again. You'll never talk to them again, but you get to hear their stories and you get to make these momentary connections, and all pretenses are dropped. It's just, and then to share a meal with the strangers is something special. So connecting to nature and connecting to people are the reasons I travel, and travel gives you that opportunity to do that in a variety of ways. And when I say nature, it even human nature, to a certain extent, like buildings and architecture and the beauty. I mean, some of the things we've done are just amazing. And then some of the things God's created, the Grand Canyon, Big Bend, and, Emery Peak, all these different places. And to the giant church in Barcelona that I'm blanking on, that was so amazing. La Familia Sagrada, I think, or something. It's just a beautiful place. But that's why I travel. Those two things, connections.
Dr. Huber, have you ever stayed in a hostel before? Because that eating meals with complete strangers is the baseline of a hostel. Like, I know I've talked to
never
Dr.
done it.
Goodwin.
Yeah, I've never done it. I would actually enjoy that, I think.
I also have
said that I
a
can be
question,
hostile.
for you, Dr. Huber.
Uh-huh.
What's your score on the Myers-Briggs extroversion scale?
Very extroverted.
You know.
Very extroverted. On the
exact opposite, right?
I'll say I'll go to a conference, and if I see someone, so I won't approach a woman who is my age or younger and is alone to eat a meal with, because it always feels like there's some sort of ulterior motive there, which I don't have. But if I see a guy or an older gentleman, I'll say, hey, you're eating alone? I'm eating alone. Why don't we eat alone together? And I typically will do that. It's easier when you're in a couple, when you're with your spouse or significant other. It's easier to say, hey, why don't you join us?
Right.
It's a little easier to do that because it's less awkward, but I don't mind doing it alone. It just have to be careful that it's not taken the wrong way. Like, hey, can I eat with you? Yeah. Creepy. But yeah, I'm definitely very extroverted. Oh, and Katie, hey, she's back.
I'm back. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is all over.
Yeah, I think we're all in that boat. Who has an answer? Matt or David?
Yeah, Dr. G hasn't yet.
Yeah. Okay. So, y'all are stressing me out. I
don't know. Eating with strangers, I'm like, oh gosh. You at airports.
Question me out. I think for me to travel, usually, it's coming back.
Yeah.
That sound like a robot for half the time there.
You did.
So for us traveling, I mean, a lot of times when we traveled, we had a specific objective to accomplish, whatever that might have been, right? Even if you're just going to get away, usually travel for us is just to get away a lot of the times, if it's family or whatever. So but we always had a specific thing, like a surf trip. Okay, we're going, it's very specific, right? So you're thinking, oh, surf trip is fun. Well, it is if you like love to surf, because we're talking about waking up at 5:30 in the morning, getting breakfast and staying in the water till about noon, get out, eat, nap, and then do it again. So like the day is surfing for, 7 to 14 days, however long we decide to stay. If you're not into that and you're there with us, you're going to hate that trip, right? I mean, that's what we're there for. So a lot of the trips are kind of like that. And the trips that we go just to get away, after a couple days, we're trying to think, okay, well, we're here, let's go explore. So a lot of times travel for us is exploring. I do enjoy seeing new places. I have to overcome probably a lot as part of the travel. When I said the packing stresses me out, it does. Like I don't know why. It takes me forever to put stuff in the suitcase. It feels like it's like a forever decision for me. It's a really weird thing, right? It's like I'm leaving home, and if I'm never going to come back, I want to make sure I have these things. It's a weird thing. I don't know.
If I never come back.
Might be it.
It's like I always go through the scenarios of like, well, I'm going to be here. I might need X, Y, Z, right? And then you're like, before you know it, you need 3 bags and you can only take 1. And so it stresses me out. And I'm the person on the, getting on an airline where I'm going to find my seat. And if I'm not sitting next to somebody that I know, I'm hopefully in my mind going to get either the aisle or the window. Because if I'm in the aisle, I can turn a little bit and I don't have to, talk to the person that's almost sharing the seat with me. And if I'm in the window, I also get to turn and, not share the seat that they're kind of sharing with me. In the middle, that's like my worst case scenario. I'm not.
Lost him again.
Dang.
Well, while we're waiting for it to come back, I have a confession. I always end up in the middle, like not out
because I'm already having to touch them, right? Yeah, that's not me. So travel for me is, I overcome a lot, but we have a fun, seeking out the unknown. I do like the architecture thing. I'm huge in architecture.
Mhm.
Going to different places. Our hope one day is to be able to travel kind of up the Northeast with the family and kind of visit those areas. My wife is really into those ghost stories, and a lot of that comes from the Northeast area and stuff like that. So one of these days, but it'll probably be a road trip. We're more into road trips than the airline idea.
I can't imagine that. That doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, for me, travel is it's more about the learning aspect. I want to go somewhere where there's going to be some kind of history there, so I can see those landscapes. I can or those art, those historical markers, something like that. I've always enjoyed that. So that's what made a lot of my international travel so much fun. Other than that, it's like Dr. Huber said, it's those connections with new people and meeting new people. For me, it's not so much on an individual, but it's more of probably my sociology background of I'm going into learning how a whole group of people in this area live, why they make the decisions they make, how do they survive, what is their family like their systems and those types of things. I want to know all that kind of stuff. And so it feels kind of like doing a book report every time I go get to travel, which is kind of weird, but I enjoy that. And for the record, staying in a hostel is probably not going to be my thing, but just throwing it out there.
Cheapest
I
way to
was mad on that one.
travel.
Yeah. All right. So the next question I have for you is, what is the most, and we'll sandwich this, right? We've had some positive. I'm gonna do a little negative section, and then we'll go back positive again. But what was the most frustrating thing that you've ever experienced on a trip? Because I think that's interesting.
I think
Um,
I'm going to start, Matt.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I think group travel, when you lead groups, I think it's ripe for frustration. When you have other people you're responsible for, I think any frustration I've had in travel has been there. And it's run the gamut. I guess I've been doing this long enough now that I've had plane cancellations where you're in a foreign country and you've got to stay another night and you don't know how you're going to get a hotel room for 80 people. And what are you going to do? Things like that. So plane cancellations, any sort of disruption to your trip's itinerary is extremely frustrating. But I have one story that's not group travel related. So I was on a trip to an all-inclusive resort in Mexico, and we go on the trip. We get there, we drive to the airport, we go to get on the plane, and the plane's delayed. So, okay, it happens. The plane's delayed again 2 hours later. Then finally they just say, we've canceled today. I'm like, wait a second. We're supposed to go to a resort, and do we get like an extra day at the resort now? How's this work out? Like, we paid for the full time. And you begin to go through all those scenarios. And they essentially give us a voucher to get a hotel. So we get the hotel, we go, and the hotel says this doesn't count. And so we have to finagle, end up having to pay for a hotel room for that night. Then we go back to the airport the next morning. And because we don't live in the city in which the airport, I've never lived in a city that had an airport. So we go back to the airport the next morning. The flight's supposed to leave at 5. It's delayed again, but this time only for 2 hours. Then we end up getting on the flight. We get there, have a wonderful time at the vacation, blah, blah, blah. Go. On the way home, the flight can't land because there's a storm in Houston. So we have to go to Austin. Well, they divert us to Austin. We can't get out of the plane when we get to Austin because Austin isn't an international airport and we're flying internationally. So we have to land on the tarmac. Well, they run out of gas in the plane because they didn't expect this. So now they have to turn the plane on. Well, it's summer. So now there's 200 people who just came from Mexico on this plane, and we're experiencing what is like 135 degrees outside in the middle of the day in an Austin airport on a runway. And they have to turn the plane off. So there's no AC, and there's a ton of people on this plane. People are breaking out bottles of wine that they had packed up. There was a guy passing around a bottle of tequila, and we were all just taking hits. So now we're drunk, angry, and hot. And so then they send us back to Houston. We land. We finally land in Houston. We've been sitting in the same seat for so many hours now at this point because we've been waiting in Austin for several hours. We get off the plane, and I walk off the plane, and I realize I left my wallet in the seat.
Oh.
I go to turn around to get my wallet, and they say you're not allowed back on the flight because it's an international flight. Once you leave the plane, you can't get back on. And I was like, but yeah, I left my wallet in my seat. They said, well, we'll go get it. We'll bring it to you. Takes them 2 hours to get my wallet to me. They finally get it to me. All the money's gone out of it.
Of course.
I didn't have that much cash, but somebody stole it. So I got really mad, and I got frustrated with the airport. I said, you guys know who had it, who gave it to you. Either you stole it or the person that gave it to you stole it, or that person. So we can track this down. Let's get everybody in a room, get somebody to fess up to get my money. At the end of it, I stopped arguing, didn't get my money. Here's the cake. Here's the icing on the cake. We go, get out of parking, go to parking, get my thing. It's 12:04 midnight. I had to pay for an extra day of parking for those extra 4 minutes of arguing that I did for the money. Just to top off the trip.
Man.
I think that's my most stressful event as well, like for you. I think that like the description you just had is
that's all one trip.
Oh God.
Gosh.
Jeez.
I've had buses cancel with, but anyway, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. Oh, I have nothing that even comes close to that. David, I don't know if we'll do like scary or anything like that, but I mean, that the only thing I can probably add to this conversation is a trip that we took across Mexico, road trip on the way back on some back highway. Well, what you could maybe call a highway, pitch black outside. There's no street light. It's basically a ranch dirt road of what we would call here in Texas, right? So we're in the middle of nowhere, no lights. We all of a sudden see lights behind us. Now, let me tell you, this is about midnight to 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Right, driving back, because we thought we could just drive back without stopping, and we're going along, and all of a sudden we see the lights light up, right? So we're getting pulled over, middle of nowhere. You pull over, right? I mean, what do you do? So we pull over. It's not just the local police. This is military Mexican police. Probably, well, what we saw, probably 3 or 4 of them, right? Come out. Whatever the machine guns they're carrying, right? Come out, 2 stay in the back, 2 walk up. And of course, they're not going to talk, they're not going to speak English to us, right? And we kind of can finagle our way, understanding a little bit of what they want. We get out of the truck, and they march us back to the back of the truck, and they're telling us that we have to unload the whole truck, everything. So surfboards, everything, luggage, just they're on the side of the street. So we unload everything, right? I mean, at this point, there's no arguing at this point. There's no like, well, no, like this, like you just do and hope. So here we are in the middle of nowhere, completely dark, basically just flashlights, unloading. You know, they're saying whatever, because at this point, even if you know Spanish, you're not picking up on what they're saying, right? It's happening so fast, you're just not paying attention to what's going on. You're just hoping. And it's what seems like hours later, they finally just seem content with whatever it is they were trying to do. And they might have said, have a good night. I don't know. Right. They get back in their vehicle and leave. Right. So we spend the next, 45 minutes in the dark, loading up the truck again. And then at that point, having no problem staying awake the rest of the way home. Right. So I don't have frustrations, but there's a scary one for you. I don't know if that was on the docket, but I had nothing to top or get close to the frustrations that Dr. Huber had.
Yeah.
I also don't have anything that get close to that, and nothing nearly as scary as your experience, Dr. Goodwin. So I'm going to explain, because it's all a matter of perspective, right? Some of these frustrations can be on a grand scale, and some of them are like little minor things that you just did not anticipate or expect, or perhaps you almost become a little bit, you start thinking to yourself, really, am I going to get worked up about this? Okay, so we're on a plane going back to, it's an Atlantic flight, so from Europe to the United States, and I get posted on a seat. Now, it's never first class. It's never, I'm in the back with the proles and all that stuff, right? Always, all the time. But I was assigned to the seat that was at the very, very front of that section of the plane. So that's the spot where you're kind of like right up against where the curtain is to the first class and everything. So you could actually stretch your legs out entirely, right? Onto, and you could have them straight out on that wall. It's fantastic. It's delightful. The seat next to, again, you're going to say, well, how's this frustrating? How's this your worst experience ever? It's all a matter of perspective, right? Because it's like you get a taste of what could be, and then it goes crashing down. But, so you have that, right? The seat next to me, on my right, entirely empty. So I can move my entire right, I can stretch it out. I have that. It's one of those big, like, there's some guy way on the other end of that, but you can stretch your whole arm out, and that's all great. And on my other side, I have a very rotund individual who is taking up a lot of space. So even though, and this is why I'm a little bit ashamed of myself, right? Because it's like you have a taste of what could be. And you know how you have like an itch you can't scratch or something like that? You have to sneeze, but you can't. Your left arm, for that 8, 9, whatever hours, I was like, I have to stretch my arm out. I can move my legs. I can move my right arm. If I were cramping, I've been in the middle seat before. I always get the middle seat. I don't know if they know I'm a small guy, so they like put me in there or something. But so I'm fine with that. I'm used to that. But
why didn't you move over?
Because at that point, I'd be stuck with the other guy who was on that side. It's like a matter of, you're right, switching it out, but that's good problem solving. I like that. I want students like you on if I were in charge of students, I want them like you, problem solvers. But yeah, so I feel so ashamed. The guy gets up to go to the bathroom one time, and it's like a glorious 3.5 minutes of, oh my God, this is why people pay $5,000 to go in first class on Atlantic flights. I would never do that, but so again, I guess it's kind of frustration of a very minor level. There's all sorts of other horror stories I can maybe think of, but I think that one is a good counter segue to, because sometimes it's just silly, right? What gets you worked up on travel.
I guess my experience is kind of a mix between frustration and scary. So I traveled to Athens, Greece with a couple of my friends that I was studying abroad with. And usually I'm the control freak that's like, I'll book the Airbnb. Don't worry about it. I got it. And this time my friend was like, I'll do it. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I trust you. And so we land in Athens and we had a later flight. So it's like 5 p.m. By the time we're following the directions to where our Airbnb is, it's like getting dark. And I'm looking around and like there's some graffiti that's kind of weird. One said like know your enemy and was like really, I was like, who's my enemy? It was really weird. And so I wasn't really paying attention. And I walk out into this square and there's a bunch of people around a fire and they turn and they see me and 4 guys all start walking towards me at the same time. And I'm like, bad. And so I like run off and we finally get to where our Airbnb is. And there's glass doors that are so graffitied that I can't see into the building. And I'm like, thank you so much for booking this, Zach. I'm so glad you did this. We get in, it's fine. We settle down. It's kind of weird. We take a walking tour the next morning of nice touristy part of Athens. And the lady's explaining all the different parts of Athens. And she's like, where are y'all staying? And I'm like, oh, this one place over here. And she's like, ah, yes, Anarchy Park. And I'm like, great. So my friend booked us in the Anarchy part of Athens. There was like 3 protests that went on with like a bunch of like police and tear gas. And so I would say a frustration of travel is sometimes having to rely on other people. And we joke about it now. And I'm like, hey, Zach, remember when you booked us in an Anarchy part of Athens? And he's like, but we had a good time. I was like, did we? So that was kind of a scary part of travel that I did.
Man.
Oh, wow. You guys. Okay, cool. So you kind of jumped a little ahead. I had like, where's the worst place you ever stayed? So I think you kind of covered that one a little bit, but
No,
for me,
I haven't.
no. Okay, we'll go there next then, because mine's pretty good too. Frustrating. We traveled to Toronto for NODA for orientation, and it was October, right, of 2001. So it was 1 month after 9/11, and it was crazy. Travel was tough. They didn't know exactly what they were going to limit on all those trips. They unlimited everything, and we go to get on the plane, and we get there. We're finally loaded up, and they evacuate the plane like immediately. Like, get your stuff and get off the plane. Basically, it was kind of how we felt, because some guy was joking to I guess with a friend of his in the airport, and one of the pilots overheard him about there being an anthrax scare in the airport, and so they unloaded every plane that was there, and we all stood on the tarmac like for an hour. They searched every plane, the whole that was in that terminal, the whole place, and that was super frustrating. And it's because I was the only other time I'd flown before that. Like, I had a pocket knife in my pocket while I was flying. It wasn't that big a deal. And so my very next flight experience was that. So that was super, super frustrating, because you're frustrated because you're there, right? Like you guys are saying, it's a change in your itinerary, but then you find out it's because somebody was just being a jerk, and it makes it all the more worse. So that's my most frustrating, without having to get into the answer for my next couple of questions. But the next question is, what's the craziest thing you've seen while traveling?
Wait, I thought we were doing worst hotel.
We'll get to that. Oh, you want to do that one first? I could.
I was
We'll
ready.
do that one first. Let's go worst hotel. Then we're going to go craziest thing you ever seen, and then I'll have one final question that'll put us at the hour mark. So, worst place you've ever stayed, hotel otherwise.
So it's a place that I actually didn't spend the night because it was so bad, and that's rare for me, because if you knew me growing up, there were places I really the expectations are low. But we were in Daytona Beach for the national cheerleading competition. Michael Preston and I, we would always go and we'd share hotel rooms. So we'd bring 80 cheerleaders and dancers from our college, and we would fly most times, but we actually got to where taking a bus with all of those people was easier than flying. Just because the airport was a disaster with all of those, knuckleheads losing their IDs and stuff. So we get there and we decided, hey, let's do a smart thing and stay in a different hotel than all the cheerleaders. So we booked a hotel called the Seaside Inn, and it's 3 blocks from the hotel that we checked all the students into. We walked down there, and all the rooms face the ocean. So you're thinking, wow, this is going to be nice. We go in, and I am not kidding. Spring break in Daytona. This room had blood on the carpet, vomit on the bed, and the refrigerator looked like a homeless person was sleeping in it. It was that bad. Like it was just in the smell, the odor when we opened the door. I don't know this was supposed to have been cleaned, but it absolutely wasn't. It was the only room they had available, and by far the worst. And it went up to the guy at the desk was just like, yeah, man, I don't care. He could have given it less. We told him, look, keep the money. We don't care. We're not staying here. But if you could give the money back, that'd be nice. And I mean, we were real polite about it. And what was funny is the very next year, the city of Daytona shut that hotel down, and it was listed as the worst single hotel in all of America. The very next year, we saw a list, and Daytona shut it down. But anyway, it was. I'm not kidding when I say blood and vomit, both, and you could tell what they were. It was so gross.
Seaside Hotel sounds like something out of a horror movie.
Yeah.
Just the title alone, the name.
Yeah.
It might have been. I actually might screenshot a picture. I've got one.
Oh.
But y'all keep talking, though. I'll find it.
Man, I'm trying to think through. And one place that we had stayed, I was at the time assistant coach for volleyball there at Schreiner, and I think we were in Austin, maybe, I don't know, and I think we accidentally booked the wrong hotel or something. But when we showed up, we were staying in a hotel that was under construction. So our room and a lot of the other rooms didn't have locks on the door.
Okay.
And were partly being constructed. It's almost like they had started the work and then had decided partly through just they weren't going to finish, or something else came up and they were going to come back to it and never did. So I'm pretty sure, at least in our room, that we had moved one of the dressers over in front of the door to act as the acting lock. Because at that point we were already there was no I don't know. We decided to stay, so we used some of the furniture in the room that night to lock the door.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, I think Athens would probably be one of the worst, like the location, I guess, wise. But then I've also stayed in a couple hostels that are not the cleanest. But that's why they were $10 a night. So I just kind of trucked through it.
Get what you pay for.
Yeah, exactly. So, just kind of go with it.
Right? Those hostels, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely don't have any war stories nearly to that effect, but you remember, you've got to put me in context. I come out of Hill Country, Texas, right? Kerrville, all of that. I was at a conference as a student. It was like a student presenter or something like that in New York, and it was so fun because we were set up. I think it was it was one of those colleges they had, right? So it was dorms, and it was like summer, so everyone was gone. It was like bare minimum, yeah. But that's fine. That's all normal. It's amenities. But it was a 3-day conference, and about by day 2 and definitely by day 3, you could tell who had a room that was in the interior, kind of facing into the campus, the quad, where it was all nice and quiet, and you could actually, sleep. And you could tell the people who were right on the street, pretty much, in New York. And this was, I guess, not so much a worse experience, because since then it's just whatever. But that was the first major experience that small town Texas, Kerr County, all that. Wow, that city really does never sleep, huh? And so I think that was by day 3. It was 4 hours, 5 hours of sleep, all said and done throughout that time. But that would be my experience. I think if I had to find one or think of one.
I can relate. When I stayed there in New York, it was in a dorm room on a campus, but the city never sleeps. It just never goes to sleep, ever.
No, exactly.
Okay, for my worst day ever. Oh, Charlie about to share a picture
Here it
of
is.
his horrible
I'm
experience.
not sure I want to see this.
Yeah.
I'm not either.
Oh,
Oh,
see?
yeah.
Oh my god.
There it is.
Nice.
This was the article that they printed, and it's a Russian hotel developer that owned this hotel, and this is the Seaside Hotel, and the room, I don't know the actual room. I remember it very specifically was one of these facing the where you see 500 North. If you go like 4 rooms over, it was on the first floor. It was so disastrous. Anyway,
Oh, man.
it was
God.
really bad. Like you can't imagine it. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's good. For mine, it's going to be in Africa. When I was there, we stayed when we was in Accra. Before we drove out the next morning, we traveled to this beautiful hotel. This place was amazing, and all the rooms were giant suites. It had these cool archways, and the architecture was unbelievably beautiful. And come to find out, that's not the place where I was staying. There was 2 people on the trip who weren't married couples. It was me and my friend Levi, and we were the 2, I guess, single folks on the trip. And so they got out, everybody booked in, and then said, "All right, now we're going to go to your guys' hotel." I was like, "Okay, cool. This is going to be awesome. Maybe ours is the same or better." And so no, it took us about 40 minutes to get to where we were going. And as we're getting closer and closer, you start to see, like, there's people, homeless are living on the side of the streets, right? We actually saw a guy laying face down in the ditch. Another guy was urinating on that guy. And that's where we turned left. So I guess you turn left at the guy urinating on the other guy there. And there's all these walls, and the walls have busted glass and metal all on the top, right? So people don't crawl over and get in. And we had to wait there for someone to come unlock the gate. They unlock the gate. We go in, they give us our room. We go inside. And it's probably, minus the blood and vomit, not much better than the one Dr. Euro was in. It was pretty rough. Like the sheets all had like after a while, sheets get those balls on them. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. It was like all the sheets were like that. Everything was mismatched. And we had the wrong suitcase. So Levi's suitcase was actually one of the ladies' suitcases. So he couldn't even change clothes. And we're like, oh, this place is wild. There's no air conditioner in there. There's like one fan. And you go to the shower. I was like, I just gotta go get a shower. So you go to the shower, and in the shower, there's a crawly thing. I don't know what it is because it wasn't a spider, but it's this big around, and it's flat though. And it was weird. I mean, I've seen tarantulas, but I don't know what that thing was. And so it was up in the top left corner of the shower, and it was a stand-up shower only, right? So no bathtub. And that was scary enough. So I'm standing there and getting to turn the water on. I'm watching that guy.
You left it there?
Well, I'm not gonna. Well, I don't have anything to kill it with. It's not my house. All I have is like a shoe, maybe. I don't know. It's almost bigger than my shoe.
It's his shower now.
Yeah. And so I was like, if I just keep an eye on it, I'll be fine, right? I'm not gonna be in the shower long. And then so I'm showering, I go to turn to wash my hair. That's when I noticed where the water heater is inside the shower. It's like the water is like right there, and then the plug comes down, and it's plugged in like right here. The shower's running, and the bottom of it is there's the how you see a plug gets busted every now and then. It's all cracked up, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna die if I don't get killed by this beast. Then I'm gonna get electrocuted to death. So I jump out of there as fast as possible. I got pictures of it somewhere, but I'm not on the fly like Dr. Huber there. There's somewhere in that, but that was crazy. And the fan, it was on a timer, and so the fan turns on, and like every 30 minutes the fan turns off. And so you wake up sweating because it's Africa. It's freaking hot all the time. Yeah. And then you get up, you turn the fan back on. It takes you 20 minutes to go to sleep. The fan only stays on 30 minutes. So that was it. That was insane. That was the worst place I think I've ever stayed on the planet, next to my house when I was growing up. But then, so the next question, I guess, is the craziest thing that you've ever seen traveling. And while we're in Africa, for me, I'm going to go ahead and start with that one. The craziest thing I've ever seen, we were walking out of the airport, and in Africa, especially in Accra, the way a lot of folks make their money is they carry your baggage from the airport to the cars, right? The taxis or whatever you're going to get into, and they have this system set up to where it's kind of like an unwritten rule of who knows who's going next to get the bags. And so you don't really have a choice, and you're like, okay, well, this guy's here, so yes, I'll give you my bags. You'll take my bags to the car, and then you better pay them. You find out, right? So it's not like in America, you can kind of get away with like, oh yeah, well here's a couple of dollars, right? Well, there's an actual price or a fee that you have to pay, and we didn't know that, right? And our tour guides were going to meet us in the parking lot, so we didn't know any of this.
Yeah.
So you go to the parking lot, and they tell you, okay, for me to carry your bags costs you this many CDs, which is the currency over there. And we're like, okay, you should just pay them. Well, that's not the scary part. So we're getting ready to drive out. The scary part is someone else decided they weren't going to pay the person who carried their bags. So no kidding, they run down the street with a spear, right? And on the end of the spear has barbed wire wrapped all the way around it. And they start spearing the tires of the car that's driving away. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. They flattened the tire this is the passenger side, close to the sidewalk. They flattened the rear tire, then they flattened the front tire. And of course, as you drive, the barbed wire gets all stuck up inside the wheel wells. And then they pull the people out and start beating them on the side of the road because they didn't give them their money. And I'm not like, just like, oh, let's kick them a couple times. Like they had bats and pieces of wood, and they were beating these poor guys. And the cops show up, and actually our traffic is stopped. So we have to watch this whole thing, so we can't go on the road. And the cops side they take the side of the people who are doing the beating. Oh yeah, you should have paid these guys. And then they still had to pay the money. That was scary. That was like less than an hour into Africa. And I was like, oh my God, it's going to be a trip. I'm here for 20 more days. So that was pretty wild.
That's crazy.
I think for me, the craziest thing, nothing like that, David. I've never
that takes the cake.
Chase someone down, stab a tire, and pull them out and beat them. That's a mafia movie right there. But I think for me, my very first trip as an advisor, I took my student body president and 3 SGA officers to New York for leadership training. Mm-hmm. And when we get off the plane, we had pre-booked through this company a shuttle, because this was before Uber. So you either take a taxi or you pre-book a shuttle in these days, and this is how you did it. And so if you do a taxi, I'd learned already, taxis are super expensive from airport to hotel. And so what you want to do is get one like a super shuttle or something. So we get this shuttle, we get in, and the guy barely speaks English. We tell him where we're going. He's like, yeah, I got you. And he takes off like he's Jeff Gordon, and his paycheck depends on the time in which he saves by achieving his objective as quickly as possible. And not kidding, I mean, the entire way he's changing lanes. He went for over a mile down a one-way street that was double parked in the middle of New York, the wrong way down a one-way street, and it was not slowing down in this van. He knocked off 3 on one side, 3 driver's side mirrors are like going against because we're going the wrong way. So he's knocking off all these mirrors, and then he's like, he gets mad and he's like, and he turns the wheel a little too hard and he bangs a car, and then he's still going. And the whole time we're freaking out. One of the girls that was with me is crying. She's like, please stop, just let me out, we're gonna die. And one of the guys is laughing maniacally. One of the students with me is just like, this is the best thing ever. And I'm I don't even know what to do. And so finally the guy pulls up and he slams on the brakes and he gets out and he throws our bags on the ground, and he's like, just waits. And I looked at him, I said, brother, you are not getting a tip. You are not getting a tip from me. And he's like, whatever. And he gets in the van and he like speeds off. I'm pretty sure he didn't keep his job after that. I can't imagine that shuttle company let him stay when they saw the damage that he had done to that van. Anyway, and I reported him to the police, but that was pretty insane.
Mine is that's insane, and mine is a little bit similar. Just like I feel like car wise, whenever you travel anywhere, it's unpredictable. And so we were in Malaysia, and we took like a little private like taxi cab. Drove by Mr. M, very nice man, and we're driving along, and we're about to merge onto like the main busy like Malaysian highway, and the car starts like screeching and stops, and we're like, oh, we must have like a flat tire or something. And so he gets out, and we're waiting in the car, and he pops his head on. He goes, tire fell off. And we're like, I'm sorry, what? And we're like in the middle of a road.
Yeah.
And he's like, the tire fell off. And so we get out of the
Wrong
car.
wheel, Jesus.
It's like not attached at all. Yeah, no kidding. There's like, it's not attached to the vehicle at all. It's like behind the car. It came off the axle completely. And he was like, I'll call someone and then we'll get back on the road. And we were like, we're just gonna head back to the hotel for a little bit. Let us know when that gets worked out. But just like when he said the tire fell off, we thought he meant it just popped, but nope, it literally fell off. Didn't awesome. Quite fear for our lives as much as Dr. Huber's story, but I thought that was kind of crazy.
I have three taxi stories. So first one, they're all relatively short though. First one is I can't remember if it was Chicago or New York, but we were in one of those taxis, and we got to our destination. You know, you tip, you do everything, you give the payment, and I didn't know I didn't know if I was going to get out of that taxi because we had a conversation. I'm a pretty amiable guy. I usually tend to nod and agree, even if it's like something I'm diametrically opposed to. That's really interesting. You're right. It's like a survival strategy or something, right? And I don't know if the guy like took that as, oh, am I being recruited? Am I joining your cult now? Is that what's going to happen? Are you going to drive away now? He's like, and then we can do this together. I think the transaction's over. I think that we're done. I'm not your friend, pal. So that's that one. I didn't know if we were actually. I started to shuttle some of the people I was with. Like I was like, go. If they take me, it's okay. You know, you get out.
Take me, it's okay.
But you could come back. The other two, really just it goes back to Cuba a little bit, right? So we were in Cuba, and then we were in Miami, and this was just because it made all these taxi stories made me think of it. So absolutely very somewhat similar populations. In Cuba, the taxi driver spent the entire time saying, and this is why the Castros, I mean, yeah, there were some things that they did that were not so good, but ultimately defensible and kind of like all of that, kind of 90 miles away in Miami. So basically we get asked, hey, why are you here? Oh, we're here to travel. They see that, they love it. They talk about Cuba. That's in Cuba. They talk about the Castros, kind of defensive. In Miami, hey, where'd you go? Oh, Cuba. And they slam the brakes. Let me tell you about Castro. Let me tell you all that stuff. It's like, oh, buddy, we're not going there to support the regime. No. It was Hemingway House. Come on. But those were some fun travel stories that thought of.
I'm gonna go a different direction a little bit. So growing up, our family took a trip to Guatemala, and down there we stayed in the jungle, right? You know, that's what you do when you're down there, and then we would go through the different pyramids, right? So just kind of like the awe, like wow moment. So nothing like the taxi drivers or anything like that, but just being there in that moment, being able to walk up the steps of the different pyramids, you know, the animals that are just wandering free, like the howler monkeys. If you haven't really seen or heard them in real life, like it's a trip. Like it's you think cute cuddly monkey, and that is not what came out of their mouth at all. But so I'll take a little bit of a different turn. And yeah, the idea that this was built in that time, at the grandeur and the structure and the architecture and time that was put into it, is kind of like a wow moment. It really makes you feel small, and at the same time, like, how much further are we going to go? Like, it just seems like they were ahead of their time so much to be able to do what they did. Of course, I'm an architecture person. I love architecture, but yeah, that was a cool moment for us.
Sweet. All right, well, we're coming close to the hour, so I'm gonna ask about one last question. So this will be kind of short, but if you had an all expense paid trip to anywhere, like anywhere, where would you go? So everybody's got like 1 minute, right?
Okay.
Antarctica, because it's really expensive and hard to get to.
There you go.
And it's
Okay.
a continent I want to go to.
That way you can say you eventually all the continents.
Exactly.
Yeah, literally.
Oh, man, I don't know. I'm gonna cop out because I want to go back to Scotland so bad. I mean, if it's all paid and I can go back, I'm not only just gonna stay the 7 days. I'll be there probably for 6 months. I'll explore every inch of that place.
There you go. For me, and again, you're gonna have to remember I'm a bit of a nerd, right? So Charles Darwin's The Voyage on the Beagle, the Galapagos, and kind of being able, not just the Galapagos, but being able to follow that path that he and his crew took. That to me would be interesting. I'm a history guy. I'm not even much of the hard sciences and all that, but Darwin, his life, it's been fascinating. And so to be able to do something like that, I think really would resonate with me, at least.
Very cool.
I think for me, I mean, I've given this a lot of thought, and it's tough because I would want to spend, I think I would want to go to Norway and Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just enamored with the Viking culture and all of that. So I think that's where I would want to go, is to see where my ancestors are from in the homeland. Charlie would go to Disney World.
Smart choice.
Probably the best decision here, honestly.
All expenses paid.
Cool.
Well, for her, every trip is all expenses.
That's true. All right.
Job.
And I guess I'll run out that when if I could go, if it's all expenses paid and I can go anywhere, I would definitely go to the moon, or I would get on that Mars trip. So I'm going to cheat big time. I'm going to go off the planet because I don't have to worry about it, right? Because I don't have to pay the money. Mars is going to be a little tough because, like, I think all my kids will be grown with grandkids by the time I got back, if I got back. But definitely the moon would be a lot of fun.
Don't worry about exploding.
Nah, whatever. It's worth the risk, right? To say you stood on the moon, it's worth the risk. I mean, I'm not gonna. The cool thing is I don't have to worry about staying in a hostel, right? So
right.
Well, maybe there is one. You don't know.
Yeah, you're right.
What
a
about
bunch
the
of weird
space
aliens on there?
You know?
It's on the dark side of the moon.
You're in the space station. You go to take a shower, one of those, hose things. And there's a giant space cockroach right on.
Yes, right. Space cockroaches. All right, as long as it's not a xenomorph, I think I'm going to be okay.
Right.
If you don't know what that is, you guys can send me a text later. All right, guys. So that takes us to the hour mark. Thank you guys all so much. I think we could probably go on for another hour on just fun stories about travel and places we'd like to still go that are on our bucket list and those types of things. But for everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us this evening. There's no show tomorrow night at 6. It'll be Kilt Talk at 10 a.m. So if you're wanting to catch us live again, it'll be tomorrow at 10 a.m. Same Monty time, same Monty channel, right? So this is your friendly neighborhood student affairs department saying thank you and good night.